This is part one of a multi-part series on the devil's greatest deception, Darnel, aka tares. The more we share, the more truth is uncovered. We'll dive deeper into wheat and Darnel in part two, but to whet your appetite, here's what Yahushua said about wheat and Darnel in Matthew 13:24-25. Another parable he put before them, saying, "The rain of the heavens has become like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed Darnel among the wheat and went away." Darnel's definition means resembling wheat or false grain. Just because something appears to be the same, both time and looking deeper will reveal the truth. I thank Yah for eyes to see and ears to hear. Let's see what Matthew 13:16-17 says. "And blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. For truly I say to you, that many prophets and righteous ones longed to see what you see, and did not see it, and to hear what you hear, and did not hear it." Matthew 13 will be at the heart of this teaching. So we'll review Matthew 13 many times during this teaching. But this teaching will be covered in multiple parts, like we said at the beginning. So this is just part one. In these times of increased knowledge, we often teach truths that have been hidden in plain sight. It's highly probable that this teaching will go into even greater depth and shift your understanding of the Word of Yah. For those of you whose eyes are open to see and ears willing to hear, you will be blessed by this teaching. You will experience a new level of freedom. For those who are not ready to receive the truth about what the Word says, then you might not be ready for this teaching, because this teaching will be meat and not milk. Hebrews 5:12, 13 and 14. It says, "For indeed, although by the time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you again the first elements of the words of Elohim. And you have become such as need milk and not solid food. For everyone partaking of milk is inexperienced in the word of righteousness, for he is a babe. For solid food is for the mature, whose senses have been trained by practice to discern both good and evil." I have witnessed both intentional and unintentional doubling down on teaching filled with leaven. There is a reason for this that we'll explore and expose during this teaching. Others have danced around this elephant in the room, but we will not. People teach that the Darnel or tares are planted among Christians in the church. We'll see that to teach such is different from what Yahushua meant and taught. You'll see with your own eyes and hear with your own ears. I know that this teaching will not be popular with those who profess Christianity as well as Judaism, for that matter. Basically, anyone who professes an Abrahamic religion, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, we will not address other pagan beliefs because they know they are not following Yah. They're already outside of this picture of even close to following Yah, because they are absolutely intentionally following a pagan god. However, there are those of the Abrahamic beliefs who are following a pagan god and not realizing that they're doing so. But those who are devout pagan worshipers, they like it that way, and they know exactly who they are. However, we will compare each of these Abrahamic religious beliefs to the Torah or law given to Yasharaal. You may say that the law given to Yasharaal no longer is in effect. There are many instances in the renewed covenant. So I'm not calling it the new covenant because that's really not the proper name. The proper name is a renewed covenant. That's what Yah has always done. He has renewed his covenant with his people. But the renewed covenant where Yahushua and his disciples before and after his death and resurrection, they follow this renewed covenant. They follow the law. James 2:11 says, "For he who said, 'Do not commit adultery,' also said, do not murder. Now, if you do not commit adultery, but you do murder, you have become a transgressor of Torah. So why did James talk about Torah? Why is James talking about the law, the Torah, if it were no longer in effect? Any teaching that is different is called leaven by Yahushua. Leaven is a very strong word that has corrupted the Torah, has corrupted teaching, true biblical teaching. Matthew 16:5-12 says, "And his taught ones came to the other side and had forgotten to take bread. And Yahushua said to them, Mind, and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, Because we brought no bread? But Yahushua, aware of this, said to them, O you of little belief, why do you reason among yourselves because you brought no bread? Do you still not understand? Neither remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000 and how many baskets you picked up? Or the 7 loaves of the 4,000 and how many large baskets you picked up? How is it that you do not understand that I did not speak to you concerning bread, but to be aware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees? Then they understood that he did not say beware of the leaven of bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Plus, you do realize that Yahushua reinforced keeping the law here, right? Keeping the Torah. If you are a reader of the Bible, you may say that Yahushua gave a new set of laws. He only gave us 2 laws to keep. Well, that is only partially correct. So let's see what he said. Matthew 22:34-40. But the Pharisees have heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, were gathered together. And one of them, one learned in the Torah, so he thought he was pretty smart about the law and well versed and learned in the Torah, did question, trying him and saying, Teacher, which is the great command in the Torah? And Yahushua said to him, You shall love Yahuah, your Elohim, with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your mind. This is the first and great command. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commands hang all the Torah and the prophets. Catch that word, that 3-letter word, all. On these 2 commands hang all the Torah and the prophets. Hang. So something is hanging off of those 2 laws, those 2 commands. On these 2 commands hang all the Torah and the prophets. So catch that. Something is hanging off of those 2 commands. So why didn't Yahushua just simply say that the law had been done away with, or it will soon be done away with? That's because that would not have been the truth. Because the law had not been eliminated. It had not been done away with, and Yahushua observed it. But let's look at how these 2 commands align with those given to the Yasharaal when they were released from Egyptian slavery. The commands we call the 10 Commandments, found in Exodus 20. That's what Yahushua was talking about when he said, on these 2 commands, hang all the Torah. We'll read them first and then associate them with the commands Yahushua gave. In verse 3 of Exodus 20, it says, You have no other mighty ones against my face. In other words, no other gods before me. Verse 4, You do not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of that which is in the heavens above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters underneath the earth. You do not bow down to them nor serve them. For I, Yahuah, your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the crookedness of the fathers on the children to the 3rd and 4th generations of those who hate me, but showing loving commitment to thousands, to those who love me and guard my commands. You do not bring the name of Yahuah, your Elohim, to naught. In other words, don't bring my name to nothing. For Yahuah does not leave the one unpunished who brings my name to naught. So anyone who brings his name to nothing stands in jeopardy of being punished. Verse 8, remember the Sabbath day to set it apart. And what we've read in the past is remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, but set it apart. Make it different than any other day of the week. Set it apart. Remember the Sabbath day to set it apart. 6 days you labor and shall do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath of Yahuah, your Elohim. You do not do any work, you nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. So no labor to be done on Sabbath day. And I would even say no hard labor, because you think about the time they were doing hard labor. Everything was manual. They didn't have technology like we have today, but everything was manual. Everything was hard. And he's saying, don't do any labor, no work on the Sabbath. He's even saying that don't even have anyone do work for you. That's how serious it was. You do no work and no one does any work for you. In other words, no one serves you on that day. Then in verse 10, he says, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of Yahuah, your Elohim. Verse 11, for in 6 days Yahuah made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore Yahuah blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart. The Sabbath day is a blessing to us. He gave it to us as a gift. It's a blessing. Therefore Yahuah blessed the Sabbath, blessed the Sabbath day, and set it apart. Verse 12, respect your father and your mother, so that your days are prolonged upon the soil which Yahuah, your Elohim, is giving you. Yahushua said, the first command is, you shall love Yahuah, your Elohim, with all your heart and with all your being and with all your mind. That command encompasses the following commands given to Yasharaal in Exodus 20. Number 1, you have no other mighty ones against my face, or in other words, no other gods before me. So obviously that one fits. Number 2, you do not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of that which is in the heavens above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters under the earth. You do not bow down to them nor serve them. We removed carved images from our home years ago. Whether those images came from Africa, the Caribbean, Pacific Islands, etc., we removed those carved images because we don't know what was put on those images. We don't know if they were part of a ritual. We don't know if some other, what type of religion or whatever pagan belief, religion that they were made under. So we removed them. We're not taking chances. Number 3, you do not bring my name of Yahuah, your Elohim, to naught. You should first learn what his name is, and then his name should roll off of your lips, and not a title or a nickname. His name, Yahuah, that's his name, not something generic. Why would he even assert to not bring his name to nothing? If we don't use his name, that means we're bringing it to nothing. So he wants us to use his name because he wants his name known, and he doesn't want it to be brought to nothing. Number 4, remember the Sabbath day to set it apart. It honors Yah to keep the day that he made for us, for you. He said it was a blessing. It was a creation. It's something that he created for us. It is a blessing. It's not something that we should take for granted. It's a blessed day. It's a set apart day. It's a different day than any other day of the week. It's the seventh day of the week. It's not the first day, as many in the Christendom has taught. It's not the first day. That's a Catholic deception that they changed the seventh day to the first day as being Sabbath. It's a deception. The seventh day is the day of rest, Sabbath, Shabbat. And we saw that in verse 11 of Exodus 20. For in 6 days Yahuah made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. He rested the seventh day. Therefore, Yahuah blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart. That is Shabbat, Sabbath, rest. That is the day he set apart, the seventh day. It is holy. And then number 5, respect your father and your mother. Showing respect to those who birthed us shows respect to the one who created them. It shows respect to the Creator. So those 5 commands hang from the command that Yahushua gave. You shall love Yahuah, your Elohim, with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your mind. Those 5 hang off of that one command. The second command that Yahushua gave is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And let's see what hangs off of that one. The command encompasses the second group of the 10 commands that were given by Moses, which reads, you do not murder. So if you love your neighbor, you won't murder them. You do not commit adultery. If you love your neighbor and yourself, you don't lead them into the sin of adultery. You do not steal. If you love your neighbor and yourself, you won't steal from them. You do not bear false witness against your neighbor. If you love your neighbor and yourself, you won't lie against them. You do not covet your neighbor's house. You do not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, or whatever belongs to your neighbor. If you love your neighbor and yourself, you won't get or take their stuff. You won't take their stuff, and you won't be covetous of their stuff. Get your own stuff and not theirs. If you're still unconvinced that the law is still in effect, let's consider something else Yahushua said in Matthew 5, beginning with verse 17. Do not think that I came to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to complete. For truly I say to you, till the heaven and the earth pass away, one yod or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Torah till all be done. Whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches men so shall be called least in the reign of the heavens. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the reign of the heavens. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall by no means enter into the reign of the heavens. The scribes and the Pharisees added leaven to the word. That's why they were not considered righteous. He said that he did not come to destroy the Torah, but to complete it. How would he and did he complete it? Let's read Hebrews 9:11 through 28. But Messiah, having become a high priest of the coming good matters, through the greater and more perfect tent, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation, entered into the most set apart place once for all, not with the blood of goats and calves, but with his own blood, having obtained everlasting redemption. For if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of a heifer, sprinkling the defiled, sets apart for the cleansing of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of the Messiah, who through the everlasting Spirit offered himself unblemished to Elohim, cleanse your conscience from dead works to serve the living Elohim. And because of this, he is the mediator of a renewed covenant. See, that here it even says renewed covenant here instead of new covenant or New Testament. It is a renewed covenant. Renewed, not something new. He has restored. He is restoring. That's what renewed means. So that death having taken place for redemption of the transgressions under the first covenant, those who are called might receive the promise of the everlasting inheritance. For where a covenant is, it is necessary for the death of the covenanted one to be established. For a covenant over those dead is firm, since it is never valid while the covenanted one is a living. Therefore, not even the first command was instituted without blood. For when, according to Torah, every command had been spoken by Moses or Moshe, to all the people. He took the blood of calves and goats and with water and scarlet wool and hyssop and sprinkled both the book itself and the people, saying, "This is the blood of the covenant which Elohim commanded you." And in the same way, he sprinkled with blood both the tent and all the vessels of the service. And according to Torah, almost all is cleansed with blood, and without shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. It was necessary then that the copies of the heavenly ones should be cleansed with these, but the heavenly ones themselves with better slaughter offerings than these. For Messiah has not entered into a set-apart place made by hand, figures of the true, but into the heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of Elohim on our behalf. So animals are no longer needed because Messiah, Yahusha, HaMashiach, he is the one who now has become that sacrifice that once and for all was given. His blood was shed so that animals no longer had to shed their blood so that we can have forgiveness. That is the good news. Not that any should offer himself often, as the high priest enters into the set-apart place year by year, with blood not his own. So blood was offered year after year for forgiveness of sins, for the pushing forward of sins. For if so, he would have had to suffer often since the foundation of the world. But now he has appeared once for all at the end of the ages to put away sin by the offering of himself. And as it awaits men to die once, and after this, the judgment. So this is something interesting as well, that we die once and we are waiting for judgment. When we die, we sleep. The scripture says that we sleep. And that's what Yahushua says, that we sleep. We don't go to heaven, we sleep and we wait for judgment. So also the Messiah, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, shall appear a second time apart from sin to those waiting for him unto deliverance. Where are we waiting? If we've died, we're asleep. If we're still living, we're waiting in the flesh. So Yahushua, he became the Passover sacrifice. Animals are no longer needed. That's the idea of celebrating Passover year after year, is that we bring into remembrance how that the blood was shed on our behalf, and Yahushua shed his blood once and for all. So we'll look at how the teachings of these Abrahamic groups, how they align with the commands given to the chosen people of Yasharaal, who are in covenant with Yahuah. People can be in covenant, but only Yasharaal is a chosen people of the covenant with Yahuah. What does that mean? Yah made a covenant with Abraham, a Hebrew, which applied to Yasmael, which is Ishmael, and to Yitzhak, which is Isaac, making the lineage of both Hebrew. However, only one lineage is the lineage of promise. The lineage of promise only belongs to the son of Yitzhak, because he is the son of promise. But Yitzhak also is the father of Yasharaal. People of Yasharaal, or Yasharaalites, if you will, aka Israelites. Before his name was changed to Yasharaal, his name was Jacob. This teaching is not an attack on individuals of these beliefs. I have friends and associates from each of them, particularly from the Christian society or the Christian community. I professed to be a Christian the majority of my life before fully embracing my identity as Yahudim of Yasharaal. Understand this, that there are people in these groups who are descendants of the covenant made with Abraham. Majority are. Here's what Genesis 12 tells us about Abraham and his descendants, beginning with verse 1. And Yahuah said to Abram, "Go yourself out of your land, from your relatives, and from your father's house, to a land which I show you. And I shall make you a great nation, and bless you, and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I shall bless those who bless you, and curse him who curses you. And in you all the clans of the earth shall be blessed. Now, this is often used for the support of the nation of Israel, but the people in the nation of Israel are not Yasharaal. So we'll talk about that in a different part of the series, and maybe part 3, but we will delve into that and understand the difference. The fact is, these verses have so much to say, but let's focus on 2 things here. Genesis 22:18 says, and in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. So that's another confirmation that his seed will be blessed. Abraham's seed will be blessed. Then in Genesis 14:13, and one who had escaped came and informed Abram, the Hebrew. See here, this is who he is. He's a Hebrew. For he dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and brother of Aner. And they had a covenant with Abram. Anyone who is of the lineage of Abraham is a Hebrew. Hebrews are all over the world, and arguably every nation on earth has been blessed by people from the Hebrew lineage. Even though there are those who report that they know where all the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom of Yasharaal are dispersed, it's not completely clear. Those 10 tribes are called by historians and authors and others the 10 lost tribes. There is evidence that some of the 10 tribes returned to Jerusalem for certain feasts, so that we can biblically see that. However, the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom will not be covered completely here in this teaching. We're not focusing on those 10 tribes. We're focusing primarily on the southern kingdom, which is the tribe of Judah, tribe of Benjamin, as well as we should include Levi in there as well, because Levi was dispersed throughout all the 12 tribes. However, what we are beginning to see is that there are variations of the Hebrew language spoken by many different people groups all over the world. We are also recognizing that there are people groups that follow parts of Torah. Many of these groups also recognize other gods, which may be an indicator that they are the lost tribes, because that's the very thing that got the northern kingdom of Yasharaal removed from the land of promise, because they started worshiping other gods, continued to worship other gods. Even though they may have recognized Yahuah, they also dabbled in these other gods, and apparently to the extent that they were exiled from the northern kingdom. Then there are the descendants of Yashmael or Ishmael. They're Arabs. They're also Hebrew as well. So yes, Hebrews are everywhere, and all Hebrews are people of covenant, of Abraham's seed. However, the people of the covenant promise are Hebrew Yasharaalites. What is meant by covenant promise? Well, let's look at Genesis 28. And beginning with verse 10, and Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he came upon a place and stopped over for the night, for the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and put it at his head. And he lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed and saw a ladder set up on the earth, and its top reached to the heavens, and saw messengers of Elohim going up and coming down on it. And see, Yahuah stood above it and said, I am Yahuah, your Elohim of Abraham, your father, and the Elohim of Yitzchak. The land on which you are lying, I give to you and your seed. And your seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and you shall break forth to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south. And all the clans of the earth shall be blessed in you and in your seed. The covenant promise with Yasharaal is a promise to be given a land and it is a promise to his seed, his family, his 12 sons. His sons are the sons of Yasharaal. They are Yasharaal. Genesis 35:10 says, and Elohim said to him, your name is Jacob. Your name is no longer called Jacob, but Yasharaal is your name. So he called his name Yasharaal. Jacob's new name was meant to be a blessing and not one that insults Yah. All of Abraham's descendants are Hebrew, but not all are Israelites or Yasharaalites. With that foundation in place, let's continue. This teaching is about a system of deception that is the fulfillment of Deuteronomy 28:36-37, which reads, Yahuah brings you and the sovereign whom you set over you to a nation which neither you nor your fathers have known. And there you shall serve other mighty ones, serve other gods. Thus you shall become an astonishment, a proverb, a mockery among all the people to which Yahuah drives you. And Yahuah shall scatter you among all peoples, from one end of the earth to the other. And there you shall serve other mighty ones, which neither you nor your fathers have known, wood and stone. I will not reteach who Deuteronomy 28 is talking about here. But after listening to this teaching, and if you don't know the answer to that statement, go back and listen to our transatlantic slave trade teaching to discover proof, clear proof, who are the people of Deuteronomy 28. These Hebrew Yasharaalites are the only nation of people who were and are in covenant with one deity who has an actual name, and his name is Yahuah. Anyone who is not a Yasharaalite can enter into this covenant as a wild branch, but Yasharaalites are the natural branches. That covenant is not with Christianity. That covenant is not with Judaism. That covenant is not with Islam. That covenant is with Yasharaal, the Yasharaalites. We'll look at how these groups are not the natural covenant of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Jacob. We'll look at that later in the future parts of this series. But we want to continue to lay this groundwork. And as we come to a close here, this is the groundwork. This is the foundation for which this teaching is built upon. But let's look at Romans chapter 11, see what it teaches us about the natural and grafted branches. Let's look at verses 16 through 21. Now, if the first fruit is set apart, the lump is also. And if the root is set apart, so are the branches. And if some of the branches were broken off, and you being a wild olive tree have been grafted in among them, and came to share the root and fatness of the olive tree, do not boast against the branches. And if you boast, remember, you do not bear the root, but the root bears you. You shall say then, the branches were broken off, that I might be grafted in. Good. By unbelief, they were broken off, and you stand by belief. Do not be arrogant, but fear. For if Elohim did not spare the natural branches, he might not spare you either. This passage refers to the covenant between Yahuah and Yasharaal, and Gentiles gaining access to the same covenant. The first fruit represents Yasharaal, who are the first and only nation to enter into covenant with Yah. The lump and the root symbolize the heritage and faith of Yasharaal. The broken off branches represent the Gentile believers who have been grafted into the same tree as the chosen of Yasharaal, grafted into the same tree and get nourished by the same root. The passage warns against boasting or feeling superior to Yasharaal, who were broken off from the tree due to unbelief. Instead, Gentile believers should remember that they are only able to share in the blessings of Yah because of their connection to Yasharaal and their faith, the faith of Yasharaal. This foundational understanding is important to this teaching. Okay, with this background, What does it have to do with Darnel? That is what we will address in part 2. But let's summarize. The things we covered are the distinction in the covenant, so that neither Christians, Jews, nor Muslims, or Jews, those who practice Judaism, nor Muslims, are in covenant as the chosen people of Yahuah. And the chosen people, only Yasharaal are deemed the chosen people of covenant with Yahuah. And there are Abrahamic descendants. People with these groups may still be descendants of Abraham's covenant, or more precisely, they are descendants of Abraham's covenant as per Genesis 12 and other scriptures which describe promises made to Abraham and his seed. There is a global presence of Hebrews. We see Hebrews are defined as descendants of Abraham. We saw that. We read that. They are widespread globally, fulfilling the blessing that all nations shall be blessed through Abraham. And I will also say this. We mentioned the 10 lost tribes, but those lost tribes are part of that blessing. So there are people who are being blessed by Hebrews that don't know they're being blessed by Hebrews, because those are people that may not even know they're Hebrew. Lost tribes, they just may not know. But there's a acknowledgement of the lost tribes of the northern kingdom of Yasharaal and the varying adherence to parts of the Torah among dispersed groups all over the world. Even if they are also practicing paganism, there are elements of Torah being practiced by them, which may be an indication that they are lost tribes. But also there's an inclusiveness, yet it's still exclusive. While the covenant includes all who are of Abraham's lineage, thus Hebrews, the specific covenant promise is held with Jacob, his descendants, who are called Yasharaal, because his name was changed to Yasharaal. And so the covenant promise of Jacob, we find it in Genesis 28, which emphasizes the specific promise to Jacob's lineage, linking the land and the blessings directly to his descendants. There's also a name significance. The name Yisra'Al, which we saw and which is continued to be used in different parts of the world with different people, that it might imply, it appears to imply one who causes Yah to stray, whereas Yasharaal suggests one who is straight with Yah. So this is how I make the difference when I am reading these scriptures, particularly from the TS 2009. It often begins names with either YE or YI. And it becomes clear to me that those names should begin with YA, because when we look at the Hebrew characters, that's the characters. It's a YA, it's never a YE or a YI. So there is also here in review just a deception and fulfillment. There's a mention of a system of deception regarding who truly belongs to the covenant, with references to the curses in Deuteronomy 28. We talked about that, tied to historical experiences like the transatlantic slave trade. It makes it really clear as to who these people are. The covenant is exclusive. The Hebrew Israelites are viewed as the only nation in true covenant with Yahuah, with a direct relationship not shared with other faiths. There's a grafting in, however, of those who are not Yasharaalites. So those who are not Yasharaalites can join in with this covenant as a wild branch or wild branches, but aren't seen as the natural branches of Yasharaal. And then when we talk about this reference in the New Testament, we saw in Romans chapter 11 that is used to explain the relationship between the natural branches, which are Yasharaal, and the grafted in branches, which are Gentiles. So anyone who's not of Yasharaal is a Gentile, emphasizing humility and continuity of the original covenant, because the Gentiles can be brought in under and with, grafted in with Yasharaal, the natural branches. So stay tuned for part 2, and we'll dive deeper, a very enlightening teaching.